Okay, so today this neural-based consciousness week 9. I'm going to talk about dissociation of consciousness and attention. Just first to recap the week 8. Initially, I introduced the different aspects of attention, and the important distinctions are attention has some selection and also enhancement and inhibition aspects. And also stimulus-defined bottom-up attention aspects and volitional or controlled aspects of top-down attention effects. And then I also pointed out that the attention is generally beneficial. So I, in general, suggest you guys to perform single task and also pursue something like a Pomodoro technique and so on. But also attention can harm performance in some cases. And as an example, I talked about experts, soccer players dribbling on the right foot is actually harmed when they pay attention to dribbling on the right foot. Something similar is a tennis player with playing backhand and things like that. But there is also this kind of interesting counterintuitive finding. Sometimes are not replicated well. So I also talked about one example of such a case where not thinking about issue appears to lead to better performance in the future, but that kind of study has not been replicated well. So the other aspect of the week 8 was that attention and consciousness can potentially have various relations, and there has been several models proposed. And one is that the attention or consciousness work in serial manner or in parallel. And another aspect is that the one is necessary or the other, or one is sufficient for the other. The global workspace, neuronal workspace theory explains and predicts that top-down attention is necessary for conscious reportability. And then I also reviewed important ways to manipulate attention, and reviewed a little bit about the change in blindness, inattention blindness, attention blink, but mostly spent time on a dual task paradigm. And I'll cover that a little bit today as well. So dual task has revealed some aspects of perception, namely face gender discrimination can be done concurrently, but not others. So this week, it's starting to become to touch on a relatively controversial field in the consciousness research. So I suggested a couple of relatively recent papers on this topic. And if you're interested in this, then this might be an interesting pursuit for the topic, but it's not required reading. And after the lecture, you'll be able to think and answer about the following questions. Is consciousness necessary for attention? Is attention necessary for consciousness? What is a no-report paradigm, and what does it tell us? Or what is the evidence to support or refute the front or back of the brain to be critical for consciousness? Okay. So the first topic is consciousness necessary for attention, or is attention necessary for consciousness? So can attention affect on non-conscious processing? That's the type of the question that can address the question in this way. So large amount of the study says actually yes. So that seems to be saying that consciousness is not required for attention. Consciousness is not necessary for attention. And this actually comes from various studies, which I already gave a talk on last year. So if you're interested in these topics in detail, I suggest you go to each of these 3 links. One is about evidence from blind-sighted patients who can attend or whose performance becomes improved upon attention, although he says things remain non-conscious, invisible. And then something similar also happens within healthy individuals The paper that I reviewed in this video is the using a continuous plus suppression to suppress the stimulus, but depending on your attentional states, trying to find a target, your eyes move towards the target location without you knowing it, and you still remain unconscious about the stimulus. Then the final evidence comes from neuroscience or neuroimaging, where you suppress the stimulus to invisible, so you don't see the target stimulus. However, depending on whether you are doing additional attentional demanding task at the center or not, modulates the activity, neuronal activity in the primary visual cortex, V1. So that seems to be suggesting that activity in the visual cortex depends on the availability of attention. So that also is consistent with the idea that the attentional process can operate on processing that is either conscious or non-conscious. So far, any question? Is this all clear? Okay. So so this empirical study, class of the study, actually then suggests that it excludes various possible models of consciousness and attention, and I'll come to that really quickly. And then this, evidence for attention without consciousness is actually accumulating over the last 20 years quite a rapid rate. And I stopped counting all these studies around 2013, but there are lots of studies to show that unconscious processing, non-conscious priming, non-conscious language effect, categorization, and things like that, or many of them require attentional amplification. So depending on whether you attend to the unconscious processing or not, you see whether the effect is there or not. So that's the large amount of this study on attention without consciousness. So with respect to attention without consciousness, attentional amplification can occur independent of consciousness. And that seems to be quite a robust finding. So let's revisit the models of the relationship between attention and consciousness at this stage. So these empirical studies show that these are two types of serial model to be incompatible with this empirical study. So these serial models suggest that first there is some kind of filtering according to attention in some way. So the left one says that the attended one results in conscious report, but the unattended or from the beginning unconscious one remains in the darkness. But here then what happens to this attended but non-conscious stimulus? So this doesn't really explain what we know. And then the other one is that first there is this conscious experience, and then some of them is only attended, and then other aspects of consciousness is unattended. But this one again doesn't explain how it's possible to select something that is already unconscious. So these two seems to be incompatible with this finding. On the other hand, this model still survives. So first, maybe the part of the sensory input is either attended or unattended. And then within the subset of the attended processing, gives rise to conscious experience, and some remains unconscious. And then those attended and conscious are the ones that are reported. So this type of the model is consistent with the idea of this global neuronal workspace theory by Stanley Hain and the colleagues. So here I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but stimulus-wise, it needs to be sufficiently strong, and then top-down attention has to be also applied to sort of make it broadly available across all the cortical areas. And then that supports this conscious reportability. if you lack the stimulus strength, then it doesn't, get reported and it remains in the back of the cortex. Or even if it's strong, if it's not selected and amplified by the attention, then no reportability. So remains, in the back of the brain still. So that's the global neuronal workspace theory. And without attentional amplification, it remains non-conscious. And this kind of model seems to be able to explain the phenomenon of inattentional blindness or change blindness or attentional blink, where unattended or unselected item remains unconscious, even though if it's sufficiently strong. So, but this doesn't actually necessarily much with what we know about the dual task. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit. So to address the question of whether the consciousness without attention, we need to look into some of the evidence. By the way, so far, is there any question? Okay. So let's go. So now the topic is consciousness without attention. So is there any evidence to suggest that attentional application is unnecessary for consciousness? So some of the evidence that we already looked at a few weeks is the dual task paradigm. And then let me review a little bit about that. So in the dual task paradigm, the key is that we have three conditions of the task. One is a single task and the central task. And the second one is a single but peripheral task. And then third one is a dual task, both central and peripheral. In the central task, typically people use this rotated L and T task, and then subject reports either they are the same or different. And then on the peripheral, there is some independent task. Here it's an animal present or absent kind of task. And then each of them will be tailored to be as difficult, like 70% correct for each. And then the question is how much interference you observe between the two when you perform the two at the same time. Okay. And then this is a schematic kind of prediction about the outcome of the task. So if you put task performance a primary experiment, like letter task, this is an L and T task here, and then let's say you only on that task you can do 70%, and then on the secondary task again you can do 70% task between animal versus non-animal, and then if both of them does not interfere at all, then this is a task performance for the dual task. And then that's the prediction of the no trade-off between the task and then consume the limited attentional resource. And then on the diagonal along this line is a complete trade-off. So if you try to perform one task, then you need to sacrifice the performance of the other. And then the last one is the sort of the intermediate performance, where two tasks are competing to some extent, but they don't need to be completely dominate over the other when you try to do one task over the other. So these three kind of situation has been empirically observed, and that this is a theoretical sort of interpretation. And here is the quick recap of what we saw last week. And this is if you do the central task of the letter performance, then the face versus face gender female versus male, that's as you can see from here, without hair it's very difficult to do, but its performance remains the same with or without the central task. So that's a no interference situation. Whereas this, apparently very simple task of red and green discs are the ones that you cannot do at the same time as a letter discrimination. So there are classes of the tasks that are either compatible here or not along here. So at some point, we have actually reviewed the pattern of this dual task result in the past. And then what we found was the following. So in the top row, I list the type of the task that would locate here, those tasks that does not interfere each other. And then at the bottom, we locate the task that requires significant trade-off. And then it turns out that face versus gender discrimination is the one that does not interfere with the letter task, whereas red-green versus green-red interfere. And then also, if you present a rotated T and Ls in the periphery, then it also interferes with the central letter task as well, even if it's magnified and big enough. The rest of the result looks like this. So here it's kind of the messy sort of the pattern of the results, but do you have any suggestion why some of the tasks would require attention and others do not? So maybe it's a bit probably difficult to type in as a response, so maybe I'll just go ahead. Okay, so one possible.
If you're a college student like me, especially.
Sorry.
Shut up and.
So, yeah, one possible interpretation of this result is that the upper row of these tasks that does not require attention, maybe the kind of the tasks that are either evolutionarily very important, like face gender discrimination or animal detection, or trained really a lot throughout the life, like upright T and L discrimination, or elementary feature discrimination, such as red-green or vertical or horizontal. And this is actually a conjunction, and this is a bit difficult to explain in this framework. On the other hand, at the bottom is the one that requires some kind of binding of the artificial features that you usually do not encounter in the natural life or evolution. So these rotated letters or symbols that may be also interfered with these highly trained upright letters. And also this rotating different types of the rotation of the dots or the cubes. Maybe also, if it's artificial, it may be a bit difficult to process with separate and dedicated neural circuits. And then this one is also quite difficult to process without any dedicated kind of machinery. So one possibility is that areas such as FFA to be dedicated for the processing of these types of stimulus. And here, maybe this word form area is dedicated for the processing, and that's why you may not need attentional amplification. So in summary, evidence from the dual task paradigms implies that not all aspects of conscious experience are dependent on attentional amplification. And some concerns are already addressed about the dual task in previous publications from our group, Matthews. And for example, Some of them includes that concerning about training effects in the dual task. So in the previous dual task, to stabilize the performance of the task, participants have been required to do the training on the central task and peripheral task separately. And then after roughly like 10 hours of the training, they started to do the dual task. But that induces concern that maybe you can start to do this task in parallel only because of the training, and you may already lose conscious experience because of this massive training. But we were able to reduce the number of the trials to for the training using the staircase method, and that's explained in this video or paper. And also another issue was whether this dual task performance was performed with conscious access or not. And to address that, Julian measured metacognition or visibility of the stimulus at the same time. So upon reporting whether it was a female or male, he also collected the confidence or visibility of the face, and then that was indeed correlated with the performance. So that means that when subjects reports seeing that face, then with confidence, then their performance was also good. That means that there is a conscious access to the stimulus discrimination under the dual task and also single task performance. So together with this, some of the concern about the dual task has been addressed. But one big remaining kind of question from the those people who suspect that the conscious experience always depend on attention is that attention may always escape from dual task at the center. And then that was a bit difficult to deal with, but last week, I also explained that this Julian's task used half blend, phase. One phase colored in the red, green, or green, red, and then that one still was possible to see in its phase aspect, but not the color aspect under the dual task condition. With that, it's a bit difficult to further sustain the claim that attention actually escapes into the face during the dual task. So now with this, if you are convinced by this evidence, then the next question is that what are the implications of these studies for our understanding of consciousness? So this is one viable model of consciousness and attention. Here's that some types of the stimulus comes into the brain, and some of them becomes conscious, and some of them remains unconscious, where attention can operate on both conscious and also unconscious processing. And then most of them gives rise to consciousness and attended, like here, conscious and attended part. That's the one that you can freely access and also report. But some of them are also consciously accessible and also experienced, such as unattended, face gender aspects or animal presence or elementary features of the vision across the visual field, even if you're really focally attending to something else. And then some other aspects of the visual processing remains unconscious, and that may include things like blind-side patients processing or CFS suppressor face and things like that. But some aspect of this unconscious processing can be actually enhanced in terms of attention, and then that may be required to get the benefit of the beta processing without really getting into consciousness. So that's one possible model remaining consistent with this empirical finding. Okay, is there any question about this so far? Other than that, I'll take a 4-minute break here.